Good evening and welcome to Book Talk. Tonight's guests are Massimo, a human, and Timmy, a dummy. Tonight's book of discussion is Nothing But the Truth. Massimo, in your opinion, at what point in the novel did the Philip Malloy situation get out of hand?
Well, I think it really got out of hand when Dr. Plenty suspended Philip Malloy.
Hey, Massimo, didn't give the reasons.
Shut up, Timmy. 3 reasons were: number 1, it made it more difficult for Philip and his family at home. Number 2, it made Philip hate Miss Narwin even more. And number 3, it made it just a big deal or fuss over just breaking one little rule.
Hey, Massimo, you didn't give a quote.
Okay, I'm gonna ignore you. And a quote on page 64 was, Dr. Plenty asked, "Please apologize to Miss Narwin." And Philip said,
Yeah.
Wait, what do you mean, no?
I finished your sentence. No.
What is the one thing that 4 different characters could have done differently that would have prevented the Philip Malloy issue from occurring at all?
Well, I can think of 5 people.
Number 1, Philip Malloy.
Number 2, Miss Narwin.
Number 3, Dr. Plenty.
And 4 and 5,
Mr. and Mrs. Malloy. Now, one thing that Mr. and Mrs. Malloy could have done was,
they could have tried to hear the other side of the story.
Dr. Plenty could have just talked to Miss Narwin and the principal about it instead of suspending him.
Miss Narwin could have just talked to Philip Malloy herself instead of sending Philip to Dr. Plenty. And Philip Malloy
could have just asked the principal if he could move out of Miss Narwin's homeroom.
What do you think the author wants you to have learned after having read his book?
Well, I learned that you shouldn't try and get out of a homeroom just by getting in trouble.
Well, you're a goner. That's a bad answer. Terrible.
You're really starting to get annoying to me. Stop it.
After reading this novel and seeing how a minor problem can become a huge issue that different people use for their own purposes, explain how this might influence or change how you think about the news, gossip, or any other information you receive.
Well, I learned that hearing isn't always exactly believing.
Well, that's a stupid question.
Timmy, it's not a stupid question. I just happen to not be interested in gossip.
Hey, didn't give a quote and examples.
That's it, Timmy, stop it. Well, an example was when Dr. Albert Seymour was interviewing Plenty, he refused to say that he suspended Philip Malloy. He said, "I did no such thing."
Who is most at fault for making the Philip Malloy issue a bigger deal?
Well, I'd say Philip Malloy himself was at fault the most for exaggerating the story to everyone.
Hey, didn't give 3 quotes.
Timmy, stop blaming me for things. Well, 3 quotes were: number 1, on page 28, he said, "This teacher has it in for me." On page 57, he said, "I was singing, aka not humming." And on page 61, he said, "She's against me being patriotic."
Hey, I have a report.
Oh, thank you. If you are reading this, you should shut up. Okay, Timmy. That is not how you write a 3-paragraph report on Nothing But the Truth. Plus, your handwriting is terrible.
Well, look at my hands.
Welcome to Book Talk with Massimo and Bobby. Today's book is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Massimo and Bobby, is it even possible to summarize this story in under 10 sentences?
No, I think it's pretty futile to try, but I'll do it anyway. Sentence 1. It is a story of love, injustice, sacrifice, and a few prisons. Sentence 2. Charles Darnay is a noble who leaves France to live a simpler life in London. Sentence 3. He marries Lucy Manette, who with the help of Mr. Lorry rescues her father from his attic where he lived after being a prisoner of the Bastille for over 10 years. Sentence 4. Sidney Carton is Charles Darnay's lookalike and loves Lucy too. Sentence 5. The Defarges are French revolutionaries who own a wine shop and keep track of enemies of the revolution. Sentence 6. Charles and Lucy are living happily in London, but bad times in France make Charles return to help an old family servant who's in prison. Sentence 7. The revolution has changed laws in France, so when Charles returns, he gets arrested too, thanks to Robespierre, who is not actually a character in the book, but will be explained later. Sentence 8. Lucy, Dr. Manette, Mr. Lorry, and Sidney Carton all come to France to rescue Charles, whose family name has made him #1 target of Madame Defarge. Sentence 9. The only person who can save him is Sidney Carton, who tricks his way into Charles's place at the guillotine. Sentence 10. Finally, La Guillotine is not a person but a mass killing machine, and is a symbol of the revolutionary motto, liberty, equality, fraternity, or death.
I'm sorry, I haven't read the book. Was this Charles Dickens guy French or something? Make that a little more clear.
No, I'm sorry, I'll just have to read it.
So the answer is no. You can't describe it in less than 10 sentences.
No.
Can you describe the historical period and what was happening at the time?
Wait, is it my turn to answer? Because I can't.
No, it is not your turn. Now shut up. While the story takes place in France and England in the late 18th century, and political and social structures are changing in the world. Both countries have a king, but in France the people are beginning to resent the aristocrats who tax them endlessly. And I mean endlessly. And to make matters worse, the bad harvests have made French peasants very hungry. Finally, there are new ideas beginning to be formed, like liberty, equality, fraternity, or death.
How does the novel show what's going on at this time?
Well, it does describe how the poor people in France are desperate enough to drink spilled wine right off the street.
Wait, I thought you said you didn't read the book.
I did just now.
Oh, that makes sense.
How are the social and political changes addressed?
Well, in the beginning of the book, the Defarges are just wine shop owners, and Madame Defarge is very quiet, doesn't really say a lot, and looks at people all day while knitting creepily. But by the end of the book, the Defarges are the ones who are going after the people who used to be in power.
If you had to pick one historical event that was depicted in the novel, what would it be?
I would pick the part where they raid the big prison thing.
You mean the Bastille?
How would I know? I didn't read the book.
I'll take this one, Bobby. Well, I'd probably have to pick Robespierre and the Reign of Terror because literally everything in the book builds up to that event.
What was going on at that time?
But basically, it was a very dangerous time for the revolution. The new ideas of equality are being threatened by nobles who left the country and other counter-revolutionaries. Also, leaders of the new assembly don't agree on how much power the king should have. But one man, Robespierre, was convinced that the only way democracy could happen is if enemies of the revolution were eliminated. That brings us to the guillotine, which was supposed to be actually a less torturous way of just dying.
Well, that does sound like a good idea. I mean, you have to get up a few bad apples.
Well, Bobby, Robespierre actually did more than that. According to my source, and I quote, "The Revolutionary Tribunal, with Robespierre at its head, ordered the execution of over 2,400 people in Paris by July 1794. Across France, over 30,000 people lost their lives."
Hey, you didn't say what your source was.
Bobby, shut up. It's from French Revolution Robespierre History Whiz website.
How long did the Reign of Terror last?
Well, it lasted from 1792 to 1794.
And exactly what ended it?
Well, okay. It ended with the execution of Robespierre himself. The quote, I am quoting another source now. "The end of Robespierre meant the end of the Reign of Terror. His death marks for many historians the end of the French Revolution."
Wait, what's going on here?
Pay attention, Bobby. I just quoted from Robespierre and the Reign of Terror from the website In-Depth Info.
Wait, you just quoted from someone Robespierre reigned on?
Moving along. Do you think the novel did an effective job of depicting this topic?
No, it wasn't realistic at all.
What are you talking about, Bobby? It's totally realistic. When you look at the history of it, it matches pretty well. In fact, Charles Dickens even describes some historical events and even quotes dates.
Can you give a few examples from the book?
Well, in chapter 4 of book 3, he describes the execution of King Louis XVI. He says, "The executioner showed the people the head of the king, and now it seemed almost in the same breath the head of his fair wife, which had had 8 weary months of imprisoned widowhood and misery to turn it gray." He also describes how there are many common people as well as nobility who were arrested and put to trial. In the same chapter, he describes the tribunals, who were the judges that listened to the prisoners' cases and how they were unfair.
Was there any one character you thought captured the reality of the Reign of Terror?
Not at all.
Bobby, I think you can think again. For example, the character of Madame Defarge really shows how revolutionary fever made common people killers too.
Can you give an example?
Well, in chapter 22 of the second book, Dickens describes how the Defarges go after Foulon, an enemy of the revolution. As the women go after Foulon, Madame Defarge leads the way, screaming, "Give us the blood of Foulon! Give us the head of Foulon! Give us the body and soul of Foulon! Rend Foulon to pieces, and dig him into the ground, that grass may grow from him." Yes, she actually screamed that.
Does the book actually mention Robespierre?
No, he's not mentioned. But in Sandy Carlin's final speech, he says, "I see the new oppressors who have risen on the destruction of the old, perishing by this retributive instrument," which basically describes the death of Robespierre.
Hey, that was actually really... Wait, you did read the book?
No, I just saw the movies. How can I read? These eyes are totally fake. They're not even real.
Well, then how can you watch the movies either?
Hello and welcome to Book Talk with Massimo and Cody. Today we'll be comparing two books, 1984 by George Orwell and Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency by Douglas Adams. The first question for today is, do you think it is the worst idea to compare these two books, and could comparing them in the first place destroy the world through some kind of interdimensional universe that is trying to get some ice cream because it's never had any?
Well, in a way, yes, I think it's one of the worst ideas ever to compare these two books because...
Wait, which book are we talking about again?
Cody, we're talking about both of them.
But I only read one of them.
Doesn't matter.
Then what are we doing?
We're trying to find out if comparing two completely different books could destroy the video and everything around it.
That sounds stupid.
Anyway, yes, I think it's a bad idea because they both have completely different plot points. One is a comedy while the other is a drama. And Dirk Gently has some of the longest sentences I've ever seen, while 1984 has some of the longest paragraphs I've ever seen.
I want ice cream.
Cody, there's no ice cream on set.
Then why is the interdimensional universe trying to take it? Plus the video and everything around it is still fine.
There's no ice cream!
There is if the government wants it to be there.
Can you please summarize both 1984 for the people who didn't read it and Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency for the people who don't even know what it is?
Well, I can already see that Cody here understands 1984 a lot better than I do, so Cody, you go and summarize it.
1984 is about a guy named Winston who's basically with the inner party, but then he decides not to be anymore. So he goes around committing thought crimes because he's going crazy with the idea of being corrupt. Then he meets a woman who's part of the Junior Anti-Sex League, and they both hang out doing corrupt things together. But then finally, towards the end, they get arrested, are negotiated with, and are cured thanks to some help from the wonderful government. And they realize what mistakes they made by committing thought crimes, so they never do it again, and live a happy life loving their leader, Big Brother.
Oh, okay, I'm just going to ignore you for now, okay? Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency is about a detective who's a phony psychic, a murdered employer, a confused employee, and an odd relationship with the employer's sister, a defective robot, a time machine at an old college, a 4-billion-year-old ghost, and a missing cat. Dirk Gently, at the beginning of the book, is trying to solve the case of a missing cat, but is soon interrupted by Richard, an old friend of his, who has just found out that his employer, Gordon Way, from Way Forward Industries, the computer company, has been murdered, which isn't surprising considering he created a lot of stress to people and everything around him. Gordon's sister, Susan, is in complete shock, and things get worse between Susan and Richard, who are sort of engaged but not really. It's later found out, only to the reader, that a defective robot called an electric monk had accidentally shot Gordon without even really knowing what he was doing. As progression is made in the case of Gordon Way, thanks to the help of Dirk's strategy of using the idea of the interconnectedness of all things, Dirk and Richard find out that one of the professors at the college Dirk, Richard, and Gordon all went to has a time machine which is hundreds of years old. After discovering the time machine, they realize that there is a ghost who turns out to be over 4 billion years old, who wants to use the time machine to go back and fix something. The something that needs to be fixed turns out to be the event that helped create all life on Earth, and after it's done, Richard and some other characters go and probably drink some tea somewhere, while Dirk gets back to solving the cat mystery.
That sounds way too creative. This book should be put in the memory hole right now.
Exactly how many similarities would these two books have, if any?
I know one thing, not 10.
For now, I'll go with 2.
I came up with 3.
How?
Actually 5.
What? How did... What are the 5 things? weapons.
I never said 5, I said 8.
Fine, then what are the 8?
No, it's only 1.
Cody, are you contradicting me because you have 1984 stuck in your head, or are you just trying to annoy me?
I'm doing it because 2 plus 2 equals 42.
Don't you mean 2 plus 2 equals 5?
Ha! I get you talking news speed.
And what are these similarities that supposedly exist but shouldn't?
Well, there were actually 7 similarities with the 2, until the Ministry of Truth went and rewrote 1984 when it was first published.
What does that have to do with the question?
Who knows? It was erased from history anyway.
Cody, shut up.
You don't actually mean that. You only think you told me to shut up because you want to express your feelings so bad, but you can't, so you therefore imagine it.
Number 1.
They're not science fiction.
Yes, they are. Now shut your fake imaginary mouth. They're both science fiction, and number 2, they have an unexpected villain.
How was O'Brien unexpected? I think you told yourself that he was of the outer party because you felt sorry for Winston, when really you knew that he was too good to be true.
He was unexpected because he didn't even show up until halfway through the book.
You still knew it the whole time.
Anyway, O'Brien being the same kind of character in the same or similar situation as the Electric Monk and Dirk Gently, yet I think even at that, there's still 2 completely different characters with different personalities on what they're doing.
I still want ice cream. Why can't I have any?
Explain how the 2 books portray science fiction in the way Dirk Gently would use his knowledge and idea of the interconnectedness of all things.
What if 1984 isn't science fiction at all? And it's just a book about the real history of what life was like in that year, and the Ministry of Truth changed the history of the 1900s so 1984 could be classified as a fictional novel.
If that were the case, then wouldn't 1984 not exist?
Who knows?
Whatever. 1984 shows science fiction in a dramatic and realistic way, but Dirk Gently shows it in a more futuristic and sort of fantastical way. Because one is a comedy and the other is basically just depression spark, the way it's showed has to change since there are 2 different ideas with 2 different problems to solve, which both technically involve the fact that the whole world could be endangered. In 1984, the world is falling apart because the government is lying to its own country to stay in power, which makes everyone paranoid. At the same time, a huge war is going on that might not even really exist because the government made it up so they could gain even more power over their people. But in Dirk Gently's holistic detective agency, the fate of the planet depends on a 4 billion-year-old ghost who, if he doesn't go back in time using the time machine at the college, will not be able to alter history so that all life on Earth could evolve into what it has become today.
That's not true at all.
Why can't you just stay shut up for at least a minute?
Because Big Brother told me not to.
I thought Big Brother didn't exist.
He totally does. You know, I really should actually be interrogating you right now, but I'll be nice to you today since we're on live television.
We're not on live television.
We are if we want to be. Plus I wrote the script to this video.
Wow, your hands are totally fake.
I still wrote it. It's right here.
Where did my hat go? Cody, did you put it in the time machine again?